Now, curb crawling of schoolgirls should be made a specific offence, according to the veteran Labour MP, Harriet Harman.
That's right, curb crawling. That's when a motorist drives up to somebody, usually a woman, to harass them. But it's only an offence if it's done by a man seeking to buy sex.
That needs to change, according to Harriet Harman, the Labour MP for Camberwell and Peckham in South London. And Harriet joins us now. Hi, Harriet. Lovely to see you on GB News.
Good afternoon.
Right, so just tell us exactly what the change in the law you are seeking to pass tonight at the House of Commons.
Well, you'll remember after the horrific murder of Sarah Everard, who was walking home in the dark after spending an evening with friends, there was an outpouring from young women and girls, mostly on social media, saying it's not safe to be walking in the dark on your own, and it should be. And why should we have to put up with the everyday experience of harassment and curb crawling, and even schoolgirls in their school uniform? You know, when they go home in the winter, it's dark, and they have a man in a van following them, calling for them to get in the van. You know, evidently, they're not encouraging or welcoming this sort of interaction, but it's done anyway. It's very intimidating and it's menacing. And basically, it's sexually predating. Now, predatory. Well, anyway, it's sexual. It's a sort of sexual predatoriness. That's the right word. Anyway, so this has been going on for forever. But now young women and girls are saying, why should we actually have to put up with it? And I think everybody's agreeing with them. Why should the right of the man to harass a schoolgirl or harass a young woman on her way home from work or on her way home from a night out, why should his right to do that be protected, but her right to walk along the streets not be protected? Anyway, if you don't want something to happen, the thing to do is to say, right, it's unlawful and it's not going to happen. And so I'm suggesting, and we've got a bill this afternoon in the House of Commons, and what I'm proposing is that we have two new offences. One, which is we make curb crawling a criminal offence, and if you do it, harassing a young woman or a girl, then you can have your driving licence taken away. And that would soon stop men doing it. It just says you can't do it anymore. You just don't have a right to crawl down along after a woman who's walking down the street. And also then harassment, somebody walking too close, following somebody down a dark street, asking for their number, asking them to come out, asking why they're not talking to them. That is an offence if you do it persistently to the same woman as a course of conduct, but it's not an offence to do it as a one-off, and we think it should be. So I'm putting all of these forward for votes in the House of Commons this afternoon, and I think the government should accept these changes.
Will the government accept it? Have they indicated that they will back you? Because, of course, it's a numbers game in Parliament. You're a Labour MP. There's more of the governing party than there are of Labour.
Well, actually, this is very much a cross-party issue, because of the more than 60 MPs who signed my new clauses, there are many Conservatives and Lib Dems and Greens, and as well as many Labour MPs. So it's actually a cross-party issue. The government have said they recognise there's a problem, and they've said they're in listening mode. But my concern is that the government's job is not just to listen and to wring their hands and say, it's awful, isn't it? Their job is actually to do something about it. And actually, I've drafted all the clauses. They don't really have to do very much at all. All they have to do is agree, and then the House of Commons would, I'm sure, pass it. They just have to not object to it. But my worry is that they're going to say, give us more time to think about it. Well, you know, when women have been suffering this, and girls, since time immemorial, we don't want the government to do more thinking time. We want them to do some action starting tonight.
Harriet, you're a very experienced campaigner and parliamentarian, if I may say so. You're also the chair of the Human Rights Select Committee, and you're calling also, aren't you, for changes in the way that rape victims are handled and the information that's made available about them. I thought we should highlight that too.
Yeah, because it's
She's there.
Defendants do in rape trials is that they bring up all the complainant's previous sexual history as a way of doing two things: to deter her from coming into the witness box and giving evidence against him, because she'll have all her previous sexual history then brought out in court, but also to undermine her reputation in the eyes of the jury in order to try and get them not to believe her but to believe him. Oh, she's had an abortion. Oh, she's committed adultery. Oh, she's had X number of previous sexual partners. And all that is not relevant to what did or didn't happen at the time in question for which the man is on trial. It's just disparagement which is being brought up to blacken her name. And it was supposed to be agreed as long ago as 1999, if you can believe it, that this is not allowed to be done in court. But unfortunately, when we brought that in, we left a bit of a loophole, and that loophole has widened and widened. And now in a third of all cases, the complainant, when they give evidence, end up, it's their sex life which is on trial instead of what happened with the defendant. And there was one recent case where a young woman's parents came to support her in court, and they didn't know that she'd had an abortion. The first they heard about it, it was a private matter for her, but the first they heard about it was when his barrister brought it up in evidence to try and somehow muddy the waters. So I've produced a new bit of a clause which would tighten up that loophole so that basically that sort of material which is not relevant and which is just there to deter complainants is not allowed in court. And we know that there's lots of rapes reported. Precious few result in a charge. Fewer even than that get to court. So we must make sure that there's not, dust thrown that undermines the prosecution.
That's an extraordinary case. I just want to change the subject slightly to Batley and Spen. And Harriet, I'm not going to ask you about what it means for Boris or what it means for Keir. I'm going to ask you what the arrival of Kim Ledbeter, Jo Cox's sister's arrival in Parliament today means to you.
Well, I think, it's a, this is a slightly sort of overstated phrase, but it is a very emotional moment. And I just am so full of admiration for Kim Ledbeter, because to step forward, she's a community-minded person. Every hour, every day of her life, she's doing work in the community. And in a way, stepping forward to be an MP is an extension of that. It's representing her community in Parliament. But how much bravery it has taken for her to step forward after her sister was murdered, and then to face an ugly campaign where she was harassed in the street. I mean, she's got a heart of gold, that woman, and she's made of steel. And I'm not just saying that. She is really extraordinary. Her sister was extraordinary as well. And I thought it was so touching when she said, if I am half the MP that Jo Cox was, I will have done her proud. I just, I think it's a big moment. And I think, I just can't wait to see her really develop and what she's going to bring to Parliament, as well as how we're going to really hear her speaking up for Batley and Spen.
Harriet Harman, former Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Labour MP. Thanks a lot for appearing on GB News.
Thanks, Harriet.